Welcome back to the Tough Cover Radio Show. I am your host, Mark Henry Jr. This is my co-host over here on the ones and twos, Sean_Barnard1. If you're watching on Twitter, you might see that it's Friday, and this show's usually on Saturday, but we're doing the second hour, so Sean can get home for his DraftKings shift. I can watch Ohio State, Texas, and we don't have to record this during Ohio State, Texas. So we wanted to get this out to the people because we had to talk some NFL. And this is how the Tough Cover Radio Show is going to be probably for most of the year, where that first hour, primary college football, probably sprinkle in Phillies, especially when we get to October baseball. We'll see how long that goes. But we'll talk that the Phillies get sprinkled into that first hour. And the second hour becomes an NFL preview. So it's nice how the football season kind of formats us. But, Sean, it's nice to be back to having real football to talk about.
Yeah, and that was going to be my number one takeaway I dove into is, for starters, appreciate the accommodation here of us being flexible here. But the takeaway is we have football, Mark Henry Jr., that the sports calendar is back in full swing. There is no more, what am I doing on Saturday? What am I doing on Sunday? There is a jam-packed schedule from start to finish for the next several months, and I could not be happier about it. So ready to dive into the takeaways, lay out some predictions, and watch some damn football this weekend.
Yeah, so for everybody that's listening on Friday right now, on Saturday, 11 to 12, Sean Barnard and I still breaking down all the huge college football matchups. Obviously, I'm wearing my Notre Dame shirt here. They play Sunday night, LSU Clemson. You got Ohio State, Texas. You have so many, the best week one of all time on college football. And we're going to discuss all of that tomorrow at 11. This podcast right here is for the National Football League, the league that pays for play. I guess you can't really use that anymore, though. That's a shame. I forget who say that. Was that it might have been a Chris Berman, the league that pays for play. I think that was a boomer. But I don't know how we Sean and I were initially just gonna pop on here and do our award predictions, do our playoff predictions, pick our Super Bowl, all that stuff. And in my opinion, I would say the biggest non-quarterback trade of my life goes down on I guess Thursday night, where Micah Parsons traded for 2 first-round picks and defensive tackle Kenny Clark from the Green Bay Packers. And I think part of what makes it such a big, impactful trade is all the Jerry Jones drama leading up to it. The fact that he's got a documentary series on Netflix accompanying this situation, and he's doing podcasts with Michael Irvin, and he's doing the whole media tour saying they're not going to trade him, saying they're going to figure it out, talking about the agent, all of that stuff. And then you combine that with Dallas, of course, despite not being successful, being a Tiffany franchise of the NFL, trading it to another Tiffany franchise of the NFL, a much more successful one in the Green Bay Packers. So these are two of the big dogs in the sport and the big kind of draws from the NFL. And they're making one of the biggest trades, I think, in NFL history. And really, in our lifetime, I really struggle to think of, before we get to our opinion on each side of it, I struggle to think of a non-quarterback trade that comes close to this. The ones Khalil Mack. But
that was the first one that popped to my mind was Khalil
Raiders
Mack.
To Bears. Yeah. I guess Khalil Mack I think Parsons is a good bit better than Mack was. Maybe that's revisionist history. Mack was awesome, but
yeah, I think that was still like Khalil Mack still sort of like there was expected another leap that didn't really happen with him. And I think if my memory serves right, like the return was greater for Mack. I think there was more draft pick capital with
similar,
that.
At least similar.
Mm-hmm. So I don't know. I think I agree with you that I think Michael Parsons probably turns out the better player. I think at the time of the trade that the expectation was for Khalil Mack to end up a little bit more than he ended up being.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of anything else. Like T.O. signed here, but it ended up kind of being a trade because of like legal stuff. I really struggle to think of another non-quarterback. I'm trying to think of receivers because receivers are the teams. I guess Tyreek Hill. Pretty big trade.
Yeah, that was big.
But Miami wasn't really a contender when they traded for him, and it never really materialized either. I have a couple thoughts about this. First of all, Green Bay, bravo. Great job by Green Bay. They deserve universal praise, and something I've seen a lot of. And Green Bay's been a cheap team for a very long time. They pretty much only keep their own talent. They only recently have really made a couple splashes in free agency. They got Xavier McKinney a couple of years ago, competing with the Eagles. It might have been last year, competing with the Eagles to go and get him. And that worked out great. He was one of the best safeties in football last year. And then now they make this big $188 million commitment to Micah Parsons, or Michael Parcel, as Jerry Jones would call him. And I think that it's impossible to not applaud that and bring up that someone was saying, like, Jerry Jones, Dallas has an owner that wants to keep money for his lavish lifestyle. Green Bay Packers don't have that owner. They've got a million owners that own a little bit of the team. They don't have to keep that money for lavish lifestyle. So I appreciate, or good, I guess I don't appreciate it, but good for Green Bay that they're willing to go out and spend the money, and they're willing to go out and go above and beyond. And on the flip side, I think Dallas did the right thing. I think I've said it on this show before. Dallas is not close to competing. I was picking Dallas to win 5 or 6 games with Parsons. So I was out on Dallas with Parsons. I think they made the right decision to trade Parsons. I think they made the right decision to get 2 first-round picks for Parsons. Now, the two things that the flip side of that, and why I'd say Green Bay's a bigger winner here than Dallas, is because why are you worrying about a 30-year-old defensive tackle? If you're trading Micah Parsons, you're getting all these picks. The future should be the focus. That third asset should have been another first or another second or another pick. It shouldn't have been a D tackle outside of his prime. And it also, you can't control who offers the most for Parsons, although there were reports that there were other teams that were like, whoa, we didn't even get a chance. We would have offered more. Some people alleging that was the Patriots that would have offered more and were upset. But Green Bay's not going to be bad in either of these next 2 years. So Dallas is getting the 20th or later pick. They've been, I think Green Bay's picked 22 or later, 5 of the last 6 years. Yeah. So I think Dallas made the right call in a vacuum. But getting a player that's 30 and doing it with a team that I think has a really high floor is probably not what I would have looked for.
Yeah, and just real quick to throw in, I think the Eagles AJ Brown trade is sneaky on the list of most impactful non-quarterback trades as I thought through. But to bring it back to Parsons, a couple different layers here. For the Packers, I absolutely respect and appreciate them going for it right now, that they aren't in this mix for the NFC, in this upper echelon of teams. You're not that high level financially committed to Jordan Love at this stake in the game, so you might as well go for it while you have a little bit of flexibility. And I do think that there is reason to believe that team can contend. So I respect them taking this big stab at it and adding to the defense there. From Dallas's perspective, this is kind of a situation to me where, like, the results and process sort of need to be judged separately. That I agree with you. I think the right overall call was to trade Micah Parsons. I do think if push were to come to shove and they went about this differently and the whole situation was handled differently, that there's a greater return for the caliber of talent that Micah Parsons is as a football player. And I do think that Jerry Jones blurred the lines between business and just relationships here, that he did let feelings get in the way of what probably was the logical way to go about this here. I do not think the situation needed to get this messy. And the end result, that while, yes, they're rewarded with 2 first-round picks, you also had a guy that could have been the franchise cornerstone forever just walk away and feel kind of disappointed as it. So, yes, I think from a pure business perspective, it was the right move to just trade Micah Parsons and get a couple picks in return. But I still kind of feel like this should be looked at as a huge missed opportunity by the Cowboys, because this should have been a guy that you're hanging his jersey in the rafters when everything's said and done, that he is a key franchise centerpiece, that you think of Micah Parsons and the Dallas Cowboys as synonymous when his career is at its end. But ultimately, that's not how things went down. And from an Eagles perspective, could not be happier about that.
Part of my take does the hot seat, cool throne thing, where hot seat, your blank is in the jackpot, you're in trouble, and cool throne is you're feeling great about what happened. Cool throne, Penn State fans in the Philadelphia area. Saquon comes home from New York. Parsons leaves Dallas, goes to another team. Yeah, you don't have to worry about the 2 best players of your generation being on the Eagles' 2 rivals anymore. That's pretty nice for Penn State.
Now we just got a free Abdul Carter next.
Now here's my it's true, but here's my gripe. I was saying that the Green Bay Packers were the most legitimate competition, not only in the NFC but in the NFL, to the Eagles before they traded for Micah Parsons. I think everybody's celebrating. Micah Parsons not a Cowboy. Ha ha ha. Jerry Jones, so dumb. I think this is actually a net negative for the Eagles.
Yeah, I'm just not there for being that scared of the Packers. That I think they're good. I think they're in the mix. I think they're in their upper echelon. But I've got good news, Mark Henry Jr., that the Green Bay Packers were not as good as the Philadelphia Eagles before trading for Michael Parsons, and they're not as good as the Philadelphia Eagles after trading for Michael Parsons there. Jordan Love, I think is a good quarterback. That defense is going to be really solid, very good this year. That kind of where I end here. Like the wide receiver core, I all think are just sort of guys there. Nobody in particular.
That's definitely the weakness. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I feel like they're a good team, not a great team. And I think if we're going to
I disagree there. Though.
You think they're so you view the Packers straight up right now as Super Bowl contenders.
The second best team in the NFL.
Wow. Yeah. I think that's crazy.
I thought that before the Parsons trade.
I think that's crazy. Yeah.
Mark Sessler from Heed the Call put them third. I know Dan Hans has put them 7th or 8th, so he was coming after Mark for putting them third. I have them second. I think that this is a team. They were the youngest team in football each of the last 2 years. And this is, by the way, tangent. Put the Packers aside for a second. Maybe I should save this because we're literally going to talk about this team. Did you realize how old the Commanders are?
Yeah, I did see that this week. I did not until I believe who was it? Jimmy
Kempski.
Let
me find this exact tweet from Jimmy Kempski so I can quote him on it. Okay. I've been calculating the average age of every team in the NFL at final cutdowns every year since 2012. The two oldest teams ever previously were the 2023 Saints and the 2018 Raiders at an average age of 27.4 years old. The 2025 Commanders have an average age of 28.1. And the crazy part about that is the Eagles' average age is 25.4. If you took the 27 oldest Commanders players and shaved 5 years off each of their ages, their roster would still be older than the Eagles. That's an astounding stat.
Yeah, that is insane. And I do think the Commanders in most people's minds are viewed as this young up and coming team here. And like even Jaden Daniels, I get he was a rookie last year, obviously. He's Great 25. Call. He's 2 years younger than Jalen Hurts, who's been around the league for a minute now. He's heading into his 6th season in the NFL. So the pressure's kind of on this team. The clock is ticking way more than I think people have fully realized. And I did not until that was fully put into context there.
Yeah, that's an insane stat there. And we'll talk about that. But anyway, Packers are, by the way, Jaden Daniels is 3 years older than Drake May. So when I say it's not a done deal that Jaden Daniels is a better player long-term than Drake May, people laugh at that. I forget who laughed at that. I don't know if Sam Ostry. I said that around someone and they thought I was crazy. I don't know who it was.
I was in agreement with that take for the record there. I do think that's fair.
He's 3 years younger. We're grading a guy who Jaden Daniels took so many snaps in college and was there for so long. He got to mature for so long. Whereas May, we always knew was more of a project. So yeah, that's a random aside again.
And looked good last year, Drake May, for the record.
At times, absolutely, especially given the surroundings and the coaching and how much of a dumpster fire that situation seemed to be. I think every team should, besides Penix and JJ, just because there's not enough to beat. And I'm optimistic about both because of the systems and because of the players around them. I'm optimistic about pretty much every quarterback from last year's draft class. But the Packers were the youngest team. Each of the last 2 years, they make the playoffs in 2 straight years of Jordan Love has never missed the playoffs. 2 straight years of being a quarterback, and he's been there both years. And I want to try to it's so hard to – I'm trying to get the splits. I always pull this up with Jordan Love. We've talked about this a couple times on this show before. But the reason that I buy the Packers so heavily is not I think if you just go position by position, they're the most complete team outside of us. They don't maybe have the Ravens and Bills have Lamar and Josh Allen. Right. So it's a little bit easier to say that even though they might not be as complete, 1 through 53, or even if you want to say 1 through 11 on both sides in terms of starting, they don't have to be complete because they have that elite guy. Jordan Love, to me, outside of the top 4 guys, and then you say Jalen and Jaden, he's the one guy that can get into that for me. And it's because of what he's looked like for stretches. In November and December in 2023 and 2024, he played 20 games. He completed 66% of his passes. He threw for 4,500 yards, 31 touchdowns, and 6 interceptions. The guy, Toyotathon Jordan Love, is a problem. He's an absolute problem. He starts years slow. He's had a couple injuries to start both years. I think people, and this is a funny thing, but the Ball Discord, the Trilbro Dude Discord, they have an NFL chat and they hate Jordan Love. They talk about Jordan Love like he's like the 25th, like you talk about Justin Herbert. Like they think he sucks. They think he's the worst. They don't understand any of the national media anytime he ever gets any attention. And I'm like, he's like the 7th or 8th best quarterback. And like, he's got an incredibly winning record since being in Green Bay. He's never had a legitimate receiver and he's still done all that. And we can complain about the receiving core all we want. They did go draft a first round guy. Yeah. So I'm willing to say, you know what? Like, let's see if Matthew Golden, and I'm not the biggest Matthew Golden guy. I didn't have him as a first round pick, but people love him. Apparently he's murdering camp. Apparently he's been unbelievable in camp. Can't drop. It's just like his hands are glue, apparently. If he can be a legitimate, just a top 30 guy, not even like a top 15 guy. If he can be a legitimate guy, that makes them really scary. Because Jacobs is, he's one of the 5 to 10 best pure run. I'd probably say one of the 5 best just pure runners in terms of being a pure running back. Taking out like pass catching and versatility and stuff like that. Just as a pure runner, he's up there with Saquon and up there with Bijan and up there with maybe Gentry now. But the reason he's not as good as those guys because he's not as multidimensional. He can't break the 80-yard run, but he's so consistent, so steady. What did he have last year? What did he have? 1,600 yards. I think it's in that range. My dog's going nuts here, so I'll throw it to you. I guess where does Green Bay rank in the NFC for you? Because I guess my pushback is, on paper the Eagles are better than every team in the NFL. We're playing that game, but naturally teams just aren't as elite year after year after year. Usually there is a bit of a drop back in some capacity. And something we don't expect to happen is going to happen to the Eagles, whether it's an injury, whether it's someone not being as good as they, I don't want to put these things out in the universe. Zach Bond was he was a special teams guy 2 years ago. And now
I got a little Cooper DeJean fear in me this year.
Yeah,
too.
Absolutely. Even Quignon, who I think is excellent. And I think Quignon and DeJean are excellent long-term, but they could easily have a step back year as a rookie. And maybe Jahad Campbell doesn't slot in as much as we think. Maybe the safety position's a problem. Maybe the one cornerback slot becomes a problem. Like there's a lot of ways that it can level out a little bit. And I guess my pushback is you said the good, not great thing for Green Bay. I think you'd say that for any team in the NFC then though.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think that's fair. For what it's worth, like before I act like I'm going super hard on them here, like I do think the Packers are going to be in the mix. I do think they're absolutely a playoff team and like a top 4 contender in the NFC. I absolutely look at them like that. I think it's tough battling with the Lions in that division here, and that there's a pretty likely path that they end up a wild card team, which is a tough slot or a tougher path, at least to the Super Bowl to this extent. And like speaking about the team from a larger scale, beyond just that like individual player, the Lamar or the Josh Allen, I almost feel like stylistically there's not a clear enough identity for Green Bay, that it feels like Jacobs
now.
Yeah, it could. And that honestly, this is certainly a step in that direction. So
because now you got Parsons and Gary on the outside at the edge. You have Edger and Cooper at linebacker, who the last 8 weeks of last year graded out as the best player in football, according to PFF. Grain of salt, whatever. But he graded out as the best player in football. There was some defensive player of the year, like sneaky buzz for him, and now it's not going to happen because Parsons is there. He's literally the favorite. And then they have the best safety in football in Xavier McKinney. Second best safety. I just disrespected Kyle Hamilton, but the second best safety in football in Xavier McKinney. He's awesome. I've always thought he was awesome, dating back to Bama and the Giants. I think that guy's awesome. I think their identity now is they have this elite defense, and now you have Love and LaFleur who can get you there on offense, and you're going to run the crap out of the ball also.
Yeah, I mean, they're going to be good. And maybe, honestly, the more like I start to wrap my head around it is the Parsons trade. I love it for Green Bay. The more I think about it, I do think that this could potentially be their identity, that now we're speaking about them as the hard-nosed defensive team that nobody wants to play. And if you have a good enough offense, which it should at least be that, and has a chance to be far better than that, to be perfectly honest there, it's a good football team. So, yeah, I hear you. I'm just not shaking in my boots about the Green Bay Packers, the way I think, like looking at them as the number 2 team in the NFL, not quite there.
Let's do the NFC then right now. Let's talk NFC playoff predictions, and we'll go 1 through 4 first, because we'll just do our divisions, and that'll be how we say it. We'll go seed by seed. My 1 seed, I just laid it out. It's the Green Bay Packers. I think the Green Bay Packers win the NFC North, and I think they go 13-4. I have them 13-4. And despite this is a weird metric and a weird way to judge this playoff. I use the V2 playoff predictor website, and I pick all the games, and then that slots it how the playoffs will end up. And it gives me this fun little thing I always like to look at. And it says versus playoff teams. So that means my projected field. So my 14 teams that I have in the field, the Eagles and there's the Eagles, Lions, Vikings, and there's one other team. Let me make sure that I'm saying the right one. No, that's it. Okay.
Played?
The Eagles, Lions, and Vikings play the most of my projected playoff field this year. They all play 11 games against my projected playoff field. The Packers somehow, for whatever reason, only play 8. So they get a little bit of a reprieve there. There's a team, by the way, that plays 5 of my projected field. We'll get to that. But the Packers are my 1 seed. I just laid it out. I won't spend too much more time on it.
Yeah, I should have jumped into the website here. I want old school pen and paper, so I don't have these in-depth access. I also did not pick records here, so I'll kind of bear with me a bit. But my number 1 seed, I still have the Philadelphia Eagles. I do think they'll be in that 13-4 range. It's tough to me. It's tough for me to look at them against any team in the NFL and feel bad about their chances. Absolutely. I sign me up for the 1 seed. Feel pretty confident about it.
They're my 2 seed. We're not going to talk too much. We have plenty of Eagles talk on this station and on this show. We've done a million times. So, and we're going to be talking Eagles all year. So, the Eagles are my 2 seed. Who's your 2 seed?
I have the Green Bay Packers. So, for all this pushback that I'm giving you in the past conversation, I do have them winning the NFC North here. I do think the Lions make the playoffs as well, but I have the Packers at the 2 seed. I could see them in that 11-12 win range is sort of where I have them pegged.
When you said the wild card, I thought that meant you were picking Detroit. So same top 2, just flipped.
Yeah.
And then my 3 and 4, I have the same record for, but my 3 seed, it went to the Rams. My NFC West winner, I have them at 11-6. My 3 through 7 seed are all 11-6 in the NFC. So that's a funny wrinkle there. But the Rams are my winner in the NFC West. Although we'll get to a team that didn't make the cut for my playoffs that I hate to admit I'm talking myself in on a little bit.
Interesting. I have one of those. I will dig a little bit deeper on the Rams conversation in a second here. My number 3 seed, I went with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I still think that they're just money, man. That offense is going to be pretty unreal. Baker Mayfield going to be absolutely slinging the football around down there. And I like the chance of the NFC South. So sign me up for the Bucs for the 3 seed.
I have the Bucs as my 4 seed at 11-6. They are the team that only plays 5 of my projected playoff field. And I have them going 1-4 in those games, funny enough. But I have them going 11-6, winning the NFC South by 3 games pretty comfortably.
Yeah, I like that there. My NFC West pick, I went with the San Francisco 49ers. So a little bit different direction here. Is that the team that you have missing the playoffs outright that you're talking yourself into? No.
I have them at 8-9. I'm not buying in on San Fran, but the schedule's so easy. The schedule for San Fran is so easy. There's a devil and a angel on my shoulder when it comes to the Niners this year. And the devil's telling me the schedule's so easy. Just pick them to go to the playoffs. They're going to be there. Look at the schedule. And then the angel on my shoulder is like, look at all the players they've lost over the last 2 years. Like, I think there's part of me that wants to push back on the Niners love and be like, yeah, but Debo and Greenlaw and Hufanga and Lenore and like all these guys who were such staples in that Super Bowl run and all those teams of that kind of Shanahan golden era with Purdy. I think people are underrating how much of that team isn't there anymore.
Yeah.
But I think Shanahan's awesome, and I think the schedule's easy.
And I also think last year specifically was a season where like everything that could go wrong did go wrong from that team, from the McCaffrey outlook to a bunch of injuries that popped up. And you're right, like a lot of like notable faces have missed. I just kind of think like things are going to break in a better direction for the San Francisco team. Right. And the Rams, honestly, we could get into that conversation if you want. I did not have them cracking my playoff list. My panic meter is up in Los Angeles.
Yeah, I think he looks great. I think he's fine now. I'm kind of I've done this 3 years in a row. I feel like where I've panicked about Stafford's health, and he's been fine, and he's looked good, and gets to the playoffs. And I've done the doubt the Rams thing so many times where I look at the roster before the year and I have no idea how this team is being picked to win as many games, and then they win more games than I think than they're supposed to. And now it's finally the year where I look at the roster and I'm like, this roster's really good. Like they actually have fixed it and they've drafted so well over the last couple years that I think they're the most top to bottom talented roster outside of Green Bay and the Eagles in the NFC. Tampa's close, but I think the Rams, it's dead even with the Rams and Tampa. Honestly, they're both pretty complete, honestly, in terms of being really solid teams. But who is your top wild card as the 5 seed?
That would be the Detroit Lions for me. And I do have some concern. The coordinator turnover, I think, is like noteworthy here. I think Dan Campbell will hit, especially in the early parts of the season, some struggles as he's asked to take on a bit more responsibility there. But at the end of the day, there's just too many weapons across this roster on both sides of the ball here, particularly offensively. I think that they will find their stride, settle in. Jared Goff's been doing this forever. Amon-Ra St. Brown, the real deal. Jameson Williams, Jahmyr Gibbs, David Montgomery. You can run down the list. That's a talented football team. They're going to find a way to scrape enough wins to be right in this heavy playoff mix.
I have Washington as my 5 seed, despite everything I just said about the old thing. There's part of me that kind of is bucking against it. I feel like there's actually a lot of Washington skepticism out there, which is the correct thing. I think I naturally thought everybody would pick them to win the Super Bowl and everybody would be on the Commanders bandwagon, but it feels like there is skepticism, which I think is correct. But I kind of think they'll be the exact same team they were last year. We kind of win that, 11 games, and they'll be a wild card and probably won't be as lucky in the playoffs. So I'll say Washington is my 5 seed. My 6 seed is Detroit. I have Detroit also winning 11 games. I could see that. I really could see them winning 9 games and missing the playoffs. It is in the realm of possibilities that Dan Campbell's a fraud and that he was a coordinator merchant. But the team's so talented. Brad Holmes has done such a good job all over that team, drafting the last couple years, and hard for me to predict a full-on meltdown, even if I want to.
Yeah, I have the same exact pairings here. Commanders are my 6 seeds. We just had those flipped a little bit there. Pretty much feel similarly. I do think that there's some sort of setback for Washington as a whole, but they're still be right in that mix. And Jaden Daniels, as much as I feel like he's been crowned too soon, still very good. The best quarterback play that organization has had in quite some time. So Commanders will be relevant, will be in the mix, and I expect to be a wild card seed there.
Yeah, and he's comfortably a top 3 quarterback in the NFC. It's Jalen, him, and Love, I think, for me, as pretty comfortably my top 3. Baker's right there. Stafford, when he's right, is right there. But my 7 seed, I'm going to say Chicago. I went with Chicago. I have them at 11-6. I've been high on them all offseason. I think Ben Johnson's a wizard. And I've been a Caleb guy. I think we get a huge Caleb year. I'm starting as the season gets closer. I'm getting more confident in Chicago's offense and more confident in Caleb. And I think everything Ben Johnson's done this offseason, he's handled it right. He's done tough love in the media. And then Caleb's come out and looked really good in the preseason. I think this offense is going to be really fun. I'm in on the Chicago experience this year. Give me 11-6. I have them sneaking in and losing to the Eagles in the first round, unfortunately for them.
Yeah, Ben Johnson and Caleb Williams are both guys that have grown on me a little bit. I just need to see it before I can fully buy in for an actual results perspective here. My final wild card seed, I'm picking the Atlanta Falcons here, that I think Michael Penix Jr. is going to come ready to sling the rock this year. I'm a believer in what I saw the second half of the season, what I saw from him in college during his time there. I think that they set him free. That offense looks a whole lot different. When you dive into the options they have, the Drake Londons, the Bijan Robinson, there is talent on that Atlanta roster. I think they take a huge step forward this year, and I like them to be in this playoff mix.
It's just not a Bryce Young believer over there. Sean Barnard not getting Carolina in the playoffs.
Not quite. I think we'll walk to a nice 8-9 type of year. My guy Bryce Young, which we will take as progress. We'll accept that.
I have Carolina at 8-9 for what it's worth. But Atlanta, I had Atlanta at 9-8. I had them as my first team out. The Caleb McGarry injury has really scared me. They lost their right tackle, and Penix is left-handed, so that's really the left tackle in that offense where it's the blind side. And he's one of the best tackles in football. I think he just got I think it's like a Rashawn Slater thing where he just got like 100 fit, whatever it was, a huge contract, and then immediately got hurt. And now you're without that guy. I knocked a win off Atlanta and they're at 8-9 for me now. I gave it to a team that I'm talking myself in on, and I'm not fully there yet, but I'm getting there. Seattle. I'm talking myself in on Seattle. I look at this defense and I think they have a chance to be elite this year. Like, I think there's a chance at the end of the year where, like, wow, Seattle's defense is the best in football. Because Mike Macdonald, classically, if you look at his, I'm not the biggest Mike Macdonald guy. I wouldn't hire a defensive coordinator as my head coach. But if we're looking at, I think there's a ceiling to it. Like, Seattle's not going to compete for anything real this year. But I think in terms of, if you have that guy, he's probably going to make the defense pretty elite one of these years. And I think this might be the year. If you look at his career at Michigan in college, his second year there, the defense took a huge step and became elite. They made the playoffs. His second year at Baltimore, they took a huge step. Even in Baltimore, his first year, they took a huge step in the second half of the year into that second year where then they were the best defense in football. And you look at the Seahawks defense and you have the guys up front, and you just brought in DeMarcus Lawrence to put on the other side of Boye Mafe. You have Leonard Williams on the inside, one of the better pass rushers on the inside. And you drafted Byron Murphy last year as a top 10 pick. He was fine as a rookie. You're hoping for a jump from your first round pick last year in year 2 in the system. You have a bunch of linebackers who they kind of have taken chances on who are maybe a little older, but have played pretty well. And Ernest Jones is back in Seattle. He was pretty good in Seattle a couple of years ago. And then the secondary is really where they're going to make their money, because you have Devin Witherspoon, one of the best corners in football, Tariq Woolen, who in my opinion has become one of the most underrated corners in football. People act like he got benched a lot last year. He played 900 snaps. He was fine. And then you have Julian Love at safety, and you also drafted Nicky Manbury. You have another guy in Kobe Bryant who could play at safety as well. Like, I think that defense has a chance to be the best defense of football. The reason I can't get there, I'm a Sam Darnold hater. If this was a Geno Smith Seahawks team, they would be in my playoffs, I think.
Yeah, I think that's accurate there. I was going to bring that up. I gave some thought to Seattle as well. I will note a guy that I'm very excited to see, Cooper Kupp this year. Like, I'm not ready to fully write this dude off.
I agree.
Where I'm at with that. It is concerning that Sean McVay was essentially like, yeah, we can move on from Cooper Kupp, as I do, take his evaluation of talent.
They got Devontae Adams, though. Like, it's not like they got rid of him for some scrub.
That's true. So, yeah, we'll see. I would like to see a Cooper Kupp, like, resurgent year, or just proven that he's still a legitimate, very good NFL wide receiver there. I don't even think there's people that are fully aware that he's on the Seattle Seahawks. So, shout out to Cooper Kupp there.
I have Kupp in multiple fantasy leagues. I'm in.
Yeah, I like that there. So, yeah, I'm intrigued by this Seattle team. Do you think there's any chance we see any Jalen Milroe noise this year?
Only if things go bad. I would say if you're under 500 at like week 14 or later, probably, then you'll probably see him.
I don't know if you heard his interview after the draft, but Seattle said that he was the best quarterback in there right from the get-go. So,
well, they then immediately said that wasn't true, in one of the dumbest things I've ever seen a front office do. Why wouldn't you just go with it?
Just roll with it at that point. But yeah,
hung him out to dry. That was unbelievable. Let's do the AFC. My 1 seed. I've got the Bills. I have the Bills as my 1 seed, and it's mostly just a little easier schedule than the team I have in my 2 seed and the 3 seed. So give me the Bills, who only play 6 of my projected playoff teams.
Yeah, I have Buffalo as well. And I think like the takeaway is we've sort of seen with the Kansas City Chiefs to this point that the mindset is you just get a ticket to the dance and make things happen when you get there. That seeding is not essential to Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid there. For a team like Buffalo, who's still trying to get over that hump, it is essential to create the best pathway possible. I think they take things seriously from game 1. I think they rake up as many wins as they possibly can. And I do think they ultimately enter through that top seed in the AFC.
My 2 seed is Baltimore, who I had Buffalo at 14-3. I had Baltimore at 13-4. You could flip that if you want. Baltimore plays 9 of my projected playoff field, whereas Buffalo plays 6. So a little bit tougher of a road there for Baltimore.
Yeah, I still want Kansas City with the 2 seed here. That he's just Mr. Inevitable. Patrick Mahomes there. They're going to be relevant. Does not matter who's around them. And I do think that roster took some steps in the right direction compared to last year. I thought, like, ultimately, last season was a pretty tough circumstance for that Chiefs roster overall. They still obviously went to the Super Bowl and had great success. I think winning the second most games in the AFC is not out the realm of possibility.
I have them 3. I have them at 12-5. Before the Rashawn Slater injury, they would have been a wild card for me. But 12-5, and they play 10 of my projected playoff teams. The interesting thing about the Chiefs this year, and the reason that I think they will not be a top 2 seed, is because of the schedule. Their schedule is a lot more difficult than I can remember a Chiefs schedule looking. Just the beginning of the year, you have the Chargers in all the way in Brazil.
Layup.
it's not a layup, but it's a pretty close spread actually. But you come home and you play the Eagles.
Mhm.
Then you go to New York. That's an easy game, but you're traveling from Brazil to Kansas City to New York. You're traveling all over the place. And then you come back to play the Ravens. Then you go play Jacksonville. Jacksonville, we don't know yet. Maybe they'll be good. Maybe they'll be better than we think.
Could also start.
They definitely could. Then you play Detroit. Tough game.
Yep.
Then you play the Raiders. I think probably not that tough of a game, especially at home. But then you get the Commanders on Monday Night Football. Then you go to Buffalo. Then you go to Denver. Like, that's a lot of – and then you get some easy games. But there's a Houston in there. There's a Chargers in there. There's another Denver in there. Another at Raiders in there. Even the Cowboys is on the road. I don't think that's a tough game. But I think it's a really tough schedule. And I think part of it is just because they have a really good division now in the AFC West. So give me the Chiefs to find their way there. But I'll have them as the 3.
Yeah, this is where my first little hot take is. My number 3 seed in the AFC will be the Cincinnati Bengals here. That I understand.
This Lamar hate thing is a bad bit. Bad bit from you, the Lamar hatred.
Not a bit, nor is it Lamar hate. I like Lamar Jackson. I do think that Joe Burrow and the Cincinnati Bengals, like, this has to be the year where they do not limp out of the starting gates here. This has been several seasons in a row and where they've just dug themselves a hole and haven't been able to climb themselves out of it. I think there's a clear focus right from day one this year. They're going to have to put up 1 million points because there are still concerns about this defense. But I think that it's going to be very competitive between the Bengals and the Ravens. I think it comes down to the end of the season. And I do think that Cincinnati is going to be more, I guess, driven from day one after missing the playoffs for back-to-back years.
Just a stat presented without comment. Joe Burrow's career record, 38-30-1. Lamar Jackson's career record, 70-24.
Yeah.
If you just go year by year, Lamar is 6-1, 13-2, 12-4, 7-5, 8-4. The 2 rough years there. Where he was really banged up, but even still 7-5 and 8-4, and then 13-3 and 12-5. I think the Ravens are the safest bet in football this year to be a division winner potentially.
Lamar is absolutely better than Joe Burrow. I'm not making that argument here.
You've been floating some anti-Ravens, anti-Lamar stuff out here the last month. I don't like it. I
just floating the playoff stats is really what you're bringing up.
I think you were a little. I think you were a little unfair in the way you did that, and Josh Allen also had just as bad moments. But whatever. I don't really want to go back to that. I don't want to go back to that. But the 4th seed, the AFC South, I'm taking the Texans, 9-8.
Yeah, I have the Houston Texans as well. I'm very curious about this team. It was such a drastic shift from how they were viewed last year. CJ Stroud, this is a big season for him. So we'll see how it goes down. But I do think ultimately not enough talent to really threaten him in that AFC South. I do think Houston wins the division.
I'm not interested in them as anything more than a de facto division winner, I guess. Like it to me, it's just the offensive line is so bad that it's hard for me to get behind this team as anything more than just a 9-8 and
the running back's going to be bizarre too. The whole shakeup of that. The Joe Mixon stuff does not sound great whatsoever.
No. I drafted him. I don't know. I might have drafted him in the radio league. But whatever league I drafted him in, it was in 9th or 10th round. And that's way too early now. I don't know if he's going to play at all. I think the reason there's no benefit to him to not play. Like, he has to play to earn a contract. No, if he's just too hurt to play, he's too hurt to play. But I find it hard to believe he's going to be fine sitting out the whole year, I guess, when he's on like a 1-year deal. I don't know if that's a dumb way to look at it, but
I do think like the genuine read here is like the injury's not healing it the way that they expected. Like it feels like purely medical for why he's not out there and that kind of thing, which it doesn't sound like they're trending in the right direction for fixing that.
No, I agree. My 5 seed's the Chargers. They're my only team that I'm confident will be a wild card. Outside of this, I think it's a wild west. I have them at 11-6. But yeah, it's really a shame. I don't even want to do a whole Herbert discourse thing here, but it's a shame because I think they were the one team that had the chance, and with the moves they made in the offseason, they were the one team that had a chance to break into that top 3. And they were the one team that I could see at least competing with them and winning a lot of games. Even if you want to say they would blow it in the playoffs, that's fine. They were the one team that I could have seen winning 12, 13 plus games, because Harbaugh came in year one and with a roster that I did not think was talented. I thought they were going to win the least games in the NFL last year. He won 11 games. And I thought that was incredible. I don't know if he was coach. I don't think he was coach of the year last year. I think he should have been. But if you look at Harbaugh, year two at Stanford, they went from like 4-8 to 10-2. At San Fran, they went from like 8-8, I think, to like 12-4. At Michigan, everywhere Harbaugh has been, they've taken a huge step in year two. I think the Rashawn Slater injury took away the chance of that, but it's hard for me to project a backtrack since they did add a lot of talent. I'm almost assuming that losing Slater from last year's team, but adding what they did brings them right back to where they were last year, which is an 11-win, non-contending wildcard team.
Yeah, I would love to see the Chargers in the playoffs, Mark Henry Jr. That there's few things in sports more entertaining than Justin Herbert with the bright lights on him. I don't have that happening in my overall rankings and predictions here. I just don't quite see it with that overall roster. To bring it back to my playoff predictions, I have the Ravens as the 5 seed here. Again, I think it's going to be very close between Cincinnati and Baltimore for winning that AFC North division there. Whichever team does not, I think, is comfortably the top wildcard team. And Cincinnati has far more concerns from like an overall roster construct standpoint with the defense there. But I do have Baltimore sliding as the 5th seed here.
My 6 and 7, I feel like I've been really consensus in the NFC and even in the top 5 here in the AFC outside of not having the Broncos. But if you've listened to this show, you've heard me rant about that enough. My 6th seed is the Raiders. I'm going with the Raiders. They have a 9. I put them at 9 wins. I really like that they went out and got Amari Cooper, by the way. I don't think Amari Cooper is as cooked as people think he is. He wasn't that bad on Buffalo. He had like 40.
They're so weird, man, with that. Like, there's some guys that could just get thrown to the scrap heap when, like I was even thinking about like Odell Beckham as an example for a dude that went from incredible to pretty much irrelevant in such a short span of time. There are guys that just catch heaters and get thrown to the side out there. We'll see what Amari still got.
Yeah, Odell was never the same after getting hurt in the Super Bowl. That was the final death knell for him. But yeah, I've got the 6th seed for the Raiders. The defense is the problem, but I really do think that the offense with a new play caller instead of the worst in the football, a new quarterback instead of the worst in football, and a new elite running back instead of the worst in football, and you have Bowers at tight end, you have a pretty good O-line. I think that the offense should be really good in Vegas. So I'm predicting them to go 9-8 and sneak in.
Yeah, I like the pick there. I could see it happening. I am buying some stock in the Raiders. I do have them falling just short of it. I kept in the same division and rock with the Denver Broncos for the 6th seed here.
Denver and Cincy. Oh, neither team's going to 9-8. How about that?
Yeah, we'll see there, Mark Henry Jr. I would push against that take right there. I think both those teams crack 9-8 and are playoff teams. Bo Nix, we know who he is at this point. Another guy who falls in that sort of Jaden Daniels conversation where I think there's value in how many reps that he has under his belt for how he can translate that. There's still some work to do in the overall roster, but I think the Broncos can be right in the mix this year.
20% of top 5 defenses finish top 10 the next year. I think they were so dependent on playing a terrible schedule. And I think that defense, which was elite last year,
led the league in sacks like notably last year.
But okay, so I will read the list. I wasn't going to do it. I'll read the list of quarterbacks. The quarterbacks the Denver Broncos beat in 2024: Baker Mayfield, good quarterback.
Yep.
Aaron Rodgers, Gardner Minshew, Derek Carr, Bryce Young before he was benched, washed Kirk Cousins before he was benched, Gardner Minshew again before he was benched, Jameis Winston before he was benched, Anthony Richardson maybe after the first benching or maybe after the second benching, and then Carson Wentz after with the entire backups of the Kansas City roster. I think that all those defensive numbers look a lot better than they should and then they will this year when they play a really, really tough schedule. They were one of those teams. I thought they played 11 of my playoff teams. They played 10. So they played 10 of my playoff teams. So I have them at 8 and 9. I also have Cincy at 8 and 9. I just don't think that Cincy's the team I'm not totally dismissive of Cincy the way I am of Denver. Just because the offense is so good. The thing I struggle with is is the offense going to be better than it was last year? I think the defense is horrible. I don't know how that defense is going to not be horrible, I guess is my problem. You say the same with the Raiders though. So I have them at 8 and 9. My 6 and 17 have 9 wins. So it's not crazy at all. My 7 seed, I have the Jets. This is my crazy
Interesting.
shot. This should probably be the Steelers, honestly. Just fully honestly, this should probably be the Steelers. But I've been a Fields guy all offseason. I do think Aaron Rodgers is a cancer. I think Aaron Glenn is bringing great stuff in terms of like the vibe to that organization. Give me the Jets, 9-8. The Steelers are such a gimme because they always make it. They always go 9-8. There's such an easy way to put one on the board. I should just do Pittsburgh, but give me the Jets.
Yeah, I do. I like that you're buying stock in the Jets. I'll also be rooting for and believing in New York this year that I am a Justin Fields guy as well. I also have really liked that the personality that Aaron Glenn has kind of carried himself with and injected in that organization. But I do think the Pittsburgh Steelers are the most obvious 7 seed of all time here. I believe they're plus 110 odds on DraftKings for them to make the playoffs this year. That feels to me like destiny here.
I think I'd rather take the win total. Because the win total's 8.5. Because you could go 9-8 and miss the playoffs. I think that's what I would go with instead. It's minus 110 instead of plus 110. But
fair enough there. But yeah, I do think Pittsburgh. The Mike Tomlin track record is as strong as you will find. Anything has to be at least like the fact that they've done it with so much worse quarterback situations. And say what you want, we'll see what he has left in the tank here. I'm not an Aaron Rodgers guy whatsoever.
On the field, you might be right, but is the cancer that is Aaron Rodgers the one thing that could stop the over 500 streak in Pittsburgh? I'm not picking it. I have them.
If Mike Tomlin can keep Antonio Brown under wraps and have us have no clue.
That's different, though. It's a receiver. When you're the quarterback, you're like the guy, especially when you're Rodgers. You're not Mason Rudolph. Like he's the attitude of that team. Like that team is going to permeate through him. I don't know. I think he's a weird guy.
He certainly is that. I'm not arguing that he is, the most normal human being in the world, but I do think Mike Tomlin is built to sustain that better than just about any coach that I can imagine. Again, I'll throw the Antonio Brown comparison. Nobody had any idea that this dude was any sort of crazy until after his Pittsburgh days there. That might be one of the more miraculous coaching just abilities that I've ever seen.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right there. But let's run down, I guess, my AFC championship. I'll skip the rest of the playoffs. My AFC championship is Baltimore on the road in Buffalo, and that's my championship. You can tell me either team wins. I'm going to go with Baltimore. I have my doubts on Sean McDermott ever being the guy who can get over the hump. I have less doubts with Baltimore. We've seen Harbaugh do it. Lamar and Allen, to me, are even. We don't know if either can get over the hump, so that's an equal to me. So I'm going to go with Harbaugh. It's really about Harbaugh over McDermott is my pick. I don't want to pick Kansas City because I really do think Kansas City's dropped back roster-wise. Josh Simmons is like the one thing you could throw back at me. If Josh Simmons is a franchise left tackle that they got at the 32nd pick because he was injured and then he just stays healthy, then maybe the roster's better than it was last year. I think outside of that, they've lost some pieces on defense over these last 2 years. And I don't think they've been drafting as much defensively. It feels like they've focused again on offense, like Worthy last year, the offensive line this year, and they had another O-line in the second round last year. They kind of went away from the defense and replenishing the defense with young talent as they've been losing those guys. So that's kind of where I'm at with Kansas City. I think we took the aura away a little bit. Like wow. I think the aura might be gone. Like I think it might be over. Not forever.
You don't see that rock on Taylor Swift's finger right now, man? You don't think there's any aura in that franchise? That they're going to be front and center more than ever before.
I think the big bad boogeyman had his pants pulled down at recess, and everybody saw he had a, you know what I mean? I think that's what happened to the Kansas City Chiefs at the Super Bowl. I think Baltimore and Buffalo watched that game, and they're like, this was the team that we can't beat. This is the team that's our boogeyman. It's like, next year is going to be different. And this time, I've never picked anyone but Kansas City to make the Super Bowl in the era of Mahomes.
Except that every single time that matchup has happened, Patrick Mahomes just goes out and kicks these guys' butts.
He
and
does.
Like I can't.
Not this year. It's not this year. It's not going to happen again.
Who do you have slaying the beast? If is it Buffalo? How your playoff?
It was Baltimore. How it played out, because Baltimore was the 2 and KC was the 3. So I had Baltimore doing it in Baltimore. I think they lost. What, they lose 17-10 in Baltimore. So that's the one thing. Like that was the game. If any of the games that Lamar didn't show up for, that would be the game that I think you could really criticize him for. Although I think that Chiefs defense was also really good 2 years ago, but the Ravens defense had a a recipe against Kansas City in that game and had in a way that Buffalo never has. Like Buffalo's never stopped them in the playoffs and has never had a good enough defensive performance in the playoffs against Kansas City. And what's changed there? Like the defense has lost guys, if anything, and McDermott's still the guy at the helm. Like I think more has changed over the years with Baltimore, and they've made more additions and changes. And you go out and draft Malachi Starks, who I think could be a difference maker day one next to Kyle Hamilton. And I think that secondary could be nasty, and that defense is going to be nasty. Give me Baltimore to win the AFC.
The thing that I'm not there as far as like the boogeyman is completely been, gotten rid of here in the NFL, that I do think Kansas City still deserves a bit of respect with that. Where I do think there's truth in it is the Eagles did reveal a little bit of the blueprint here, that you got to bring the heat. You got to get Patrick Mahomes running for his life. This has to be sort of defensively induced game plan for making your presence felt against this Chiefs team. So I'm not there to the point where the boogeyman has been slayed, but I do think that there is a clear direction for how you take down this empire in a way that seemed impossible before.
So we'll do the awards rapid fire. I'll just read them off. MVP, I've got Jalen Hurts. I'm putting my money where my mouth is. I think Saquon, I think 7 of the, I forget the exact stat. It's either 6 or 7 of the 8 guys who have ran for 2,000 have lost 800 plus yards the next year. I think Saquon either has a much less productive season. Maybe there's an injury. Maybe they conserve him. Maybe he's not being used 40 times a game or whatever. Like, I think this becomes much more of a passing offense. We're going to be in more close games, more shootouts, and I'm putting my money where my mouth is. I've been drafting as much AJ and Devontae and Goddard in fantasy as I can. Jalen's the guy who throws them the ball. If Saquon has a much worse year and the offense is just as good and the team's 13-4, I think it's going to break some minds of people who wanted to vote Saquon as MVP last year and maybe sway some people for Jalen. It's probably going to be Lamar or Josh, but might as well be fun. Offensive player of the year, Ashton Genty. Also my offensive rookie of the year. I've talked about it before. I think he's going to be special. I think he's going to be RB1 in fantasy as a rookie. Defensive player of the year, I couldn't find a value I liked. I couldn't find any long shot I loved. Maybe Max Crosby. You could twist my arm and get there. I went TJ Watt. Boring. Not much to say on it. Defensive rookie of the year, Abdul Carter. Boring. Not much to say on it. Coach of the year, I'm going Ben Johnson. I'm tempted by Pete Carroll and Aaron Glenn. I have them in the playoffs. Yeah. But 11 wins for the Bears. Maybe Caleb has like an excellent breakthrough season. I think that'll be more like a mainstream story, I guess. So give me Ben Johnson as the coach of the year.
Nice. And I'll rip through mine. We are on the same page with MVP here. I thought I was going to be making the selling point. Jalen Hurts will win MVP this year, plus 1,800 odds on DraftKings Sportsbook here. I do think for all the same reasons that you laid out. And the other thing to keep in mind is, one of the reasons why his stats were so low, if you want to look at him that way for last year, they were kicking teams' butts, man. Yeah. They did not need to put up points in the second half of games. It was control the clock, bleed it out. I do think things could be a little different this year, where it's a bit more competitive on a week-to-week basis, and Jalen Hurts is asked to deliver. I think he does that. I think we get a lot more of, so that's what y'all wanted to see, type of press conferences from QB1 right here. So do have him for MVP.
The odds are actually a little lower than I thought. 1,800. Yeah. I would have guessed like 25, 30 to 1. So it makes me, but I'm actually happy that they're 18 to 1. Like, I think it's a good starting point.
Yeah, I believe he was sixth among players, if I remember correctly there. So not disrespected in the eyes of the sportsbook there. That is a guy that certainly has a chance with it. I'll keep it rolling here. Offensive rookie of the year, I agree with you. Not a ton of value. Ginty, I think, is the obvious pick at plus 275. I did want to get a little love for my Travion Henderson take here. He's holding plus 1,200 odds there. I think there's a chance this dude puts up some pretty absurd numbers.
What's O'Marion? Do you have it up there?
Plus 800, I believe 800. It was for him. So he was above Travion there. All guys, I think, are going to have very good rookie seasons. So you do have that for rookie of the year. Defensive rookie of the year, I do think Abdul Carter is the obvious one here.
Not another, there's not another like Travis Hunter, but it's going to be so weird. Like,
yeah. Jihad Campbell, I'll throw out, was plus 1,400 odds for that. I don't think it happens, but he's one of those guys I can kind of talk myself into.
I don't know if he gets the counting stats for it. Like, I think you need like the sacks or picks probably to make it work.
I think you're probably right about that. I think ultimately Abdul Carter is going to be the guy, plus 225 odds there. Offensive player of the year, I went Jamar Chase, plus 850 odds. I think the 2,000-yard club is very much in reach for him this year. That Cincinnati offense is going to be a blast to watch, and it's going to be necessary based on how much the defense gives up. So do like Jamar Chase for offensive rookie of the year. Defensive player of the year, Jared Verse, plus 1,500 is sort of my long shot take. I think he's legit, man. One of like the more difficult, one of the only human beings I've ever seen just put Jordan Mailata on his butt like that. I think Jared Verse can build off that. And the coach of the year, I battled around with a couple different ones. I like the Aaron Glenn shout. I'm going a little bit off the map and taking Mike Vrabel to earn it.
I like it.
I don't love like the outlook for the team this year, but I think there's going to be some pretty clear, tangible steps they do take. I think he's going to get the Patriots back to looking like that New England team of destiny type organization that they aspire to be. Vrabel brings the personality, has some X's and O's, and I think there's enough talent for him to work with. So giving Vrabel a little bit of love there.
By the way, I will just say, I think Jared Verse is overrated. 4.5 sacks last year. People are talking about him like he's Aaron Donald now. He was great.
I hear you.
He was great in the playoffs. And I liked him in the draft, so I think he's a stud. But I'm getting a little squirrely about the
and shout out my buddy Nick Anderson here. So he went to Bloomsburg High School. Jared Verse, a PA guy.
Yeah.
So my buddy Nick Anderson was the quarterback at Bloomsburg High School, and he went to their rival school here, and he just talks about how much he sucked in high school. Like he's like, I have no idea how this guy even got a Division I scholarship. I can't believe he's in the NFL. He was horrible when playing against us there. So it's kind of pretty funny to me.
That is very funny. But let's wrap it up. We went long there. Thanks everybody for listening. Sean Barnard. Thanks to Sean Barnard for joining us. Sean_Bernard1. Follow me at Mark Henry Jr. NFL. That's going to do it. Tough Cover Country. Let's ride.